June 13th, 2025, the world was asleep, yet above Israel the sky suddenly came alive. Dozens of fighter jets roared into the night, vanishing into the black horizon with a single mission: to strike at the heart of Iran's nuclear ambition. For years, Tehran had pushed the limits, enriching uranium in defiance of the entire free world. Now, Israel had made its decision. The time for warnings was over. The time for action had begun. Iran is one of the world's oldest civilizations. For centuries, it stood as a bridge between East and West, a land of ancient culture and modern aspirations. In the early 20th century, the Shahs advanced education, Western values, and modernization. But beneath the surface, a religious revolution was brewing. The conflict between modernization and radical Islam would reshape not just Iran, but the entire Middle East. In 1979, the revolution broke into the open. A violent coup led by Ayatollah Khomeini engulfed the country into chaos and dragged Iran back into the Dark Ages. After the revolution, the media was censored, strict Sharia law was implemented, and dissenters were tortured and publicly executed. But this internal reign of terror was just the beginning. All of this was interwoven with one consuming desire: a fervent, religious, holy war, a campaign to destroy the state of Israel and the United States of America, wiping both countries from off the map. Iran's relationship with Israel immediately transformed from alliance to existential enemy. The Israeli embassy in Tehran was shuttered and handed over to the PLO. But Iran's strategy was much more sinister than just simple diplomacy. In the 1980s, they began building what would become known as, in the words of George Bush, the Axis of Evil, a network of terrorist proxies stretching across the Middle East. The end goal, as stated publicly by the Ayatollahs, was first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. To accomplish this, Iran's strategy was simple. First, arm and strengthen Hezbollah in Lebanon, giving them direct training and funding. Then do the same for Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, then the Houthis in Yemen. Iran's total commitment to the annihilation of Israel and America knew no logical bounds. They funded Shiite militias in Syria and Iraq, with each group serving as a weapon in Iran's grand strategy, a ring of fire surrounding the Jewish state. And beyond all of this, Iran began developing nuclear weapons. If all else failed in destroying the evil they considered Israel to be, nothing but cockroaches would survive in the land of Israel to tell the tale. But unlike the Jews of the Holocaust, Israel was armed and aware of the threat that they faced. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had been warning about the threat Iran posed toward the state of Israel and America for decades. Year after year, in speech after speech, Netanyahu sounded the alarm on Iran's nuclear weapons program. But Israel did more than just talk. They attacked Iran's nuclear scientists, hacked into their networks, destroying valuable research, and pursued countless other black ops missions to set back and delay Iran's nuclear program by decades.
At the same time,
Thankfully, both Republicans and Democrats in America have largely recognized the threat that Iran's nuclear program poses to America. From Clinton to Bush, on to Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump again, countless promises have been made to halt Iran's pursuit of nuclear weaponry. Promises made and promises broken. But while the West has been talking, Iran has been hard at work. And not just on developing weapons of mass destruction, but also building up their terrorist infrastructure, moving weapons, training fighters, and planning operations. After decades of preparation, Iran finally determined the time was right, and through Hamas, Iran attacked Israel on October 7th. A day later, Iran brought Hezbollah into the fight, and the Houthis a short time later. The setup was perfect. The payoff was not. As a direct result of the gradual escalation between Israel and Iran through Iran's proxy forces, Israel struck Iran's consulate in Damascus, killing senior Revolutionary Guard and Quds Force commanders. Iran vowed to respond in overwhelming force. In the early morning hours of April 14, 2024, approximately 2 a.m. local time, explosions were heard in Jerusalem. air raid sirens sounded across Israel, the entire country, from north to south, east to west, was under attack. Millions of Israelis rushed to bomb shelters, parents woke their sleeping children and ran for cover. The largest missile attack in Israel's history had begun. Iran launched more than 300 projectiles, around 170 drones and over 120 ballistic missiles toward Israel. This marked the largest attempted drone strike in history and the first time since 1991 that Israel was attacked directly by the military of another nation. Miraculously, Israel was able to intercept around 99% of the weapons, most of them outside Israeli airspace, and only one injury from a rocket was reported. Naturally, the US helped defend Israel, but the UK and France also helped shoot down Iranian projectiles. Surprisingly, Jordan and Saudi Arabia also helped defend the Jewish nation, although Jordan claimed to be protecting itself, and the Saudis have not confirmed their involvement. The UAE also helped Israel by providing intelligence on Iran's planned strikes. It's unlikely that Iran predicted so many Arab states would come to Israel's defense. Iran's aggression did not go unpunished. Israel was quick to strike back, targeting 3 strategic Iranian military sites. Joe Biden was president at the time and in the midst of his re-election campaign. Many believe that he strong-armed Israel into limiting their strikes for fear that the Middle East would descend into chaos, thus shattering his hopes for a second term. Although there was no formal ceasefire or truce announced, Israel and Iran both felt that they had made their point, at least for the time being. As Israel continued to fight against Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in Lebanon, they continued to score major and decisive wins. Countless Hamas leaders were assassinated, and the replacements soon met the same fate. Hezbollah to the north was not faring any better. On September 27, 2024, Israel successfully eliminated longtime Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in a massive airstrike in which 80 bombs were dropped. A senior leader of the IRGC was also killed in the strike, and Iran decided to once again attack Israel directly. On October 1st, Iran again launched ballistic missiles at the tiny Jewish nation. This time, they launched around 200 missiles spread over 2 waves. A few missiles managed to slip through Israel's air defense system and land near civilian areas, one in an open area in Tel Aviv and another at a school in Gadara, while still a few more impacted at Israeli Air Force bases, although without much apparent damage. Israel's response was again calculated, but also softened. A few strategic Iranian sites were targeted, then Israel parked their jets. The apparent calm was deceptive. Intelligence agencies across the West were tracking increasingly alarming developments. Iran's nuclear program was accelerating at an unprecedented pace, with uranium enrichment levels reaching dangerous thresholds. The regime's proxy network was regrouping and rearming while Iranian scientists worked around the clock to achieve weapons-grade capability. The breakout time for a nuclear weapon had shrunk to a matter of weeks. For months, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Iran continued its provocations through proxies, while Israel prepared for what many saw as an inevitable confrontation. What followed was a masterclass in strategic deception. In the weeks leading up to what became known as Operation Rising Lion, both President Trump and Israeli leadership engaged in an elaborate campaign of misdirection that fooled Iran and much of the world. Trump publicly stated he didn't want Israel to target Iran as negotiations on a potential nuclear deal continued. A 6th round of talks was set for that Sunday in Oman, with Trump publicly stating, "We're fairly close to an agreement." But Trump had also given Iran a 60-day window to make a deal, and that window was quickly closing. This created the perfect opportunity for Israel to carry out decisive action. At precisely 2 a.m. local time on June 13, 2025, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, unleashing the full might of its military and intelligence apparatus against Iran. It was day 61. The coordinated assault involved approximately 200 Israeli aircraft, including F-35I stealth fighters and F-15I fighter jets, targeting nuclear facilities like Natanz and Fordow, missile sites in Khuzestan, and IRGC command centers in Tehran. By 6:30 a.m., the Israeli Air Force had conducted 5 waves of airstrikes, deploying over 330 precision-guided munitions, including bunker-buster bombs, to cripple Iran's nuclear infrastructure. Over a dozen senior Iranian military officials, including IRGC Quds Force commanders and leading nuclear scientists, were eliminated in targeted strikes using drones and intelligence-driven operations. Over the next several days, Israel sustained the campaign with nightly raids, cyber attacks disrupting Iran's air defenses, and special forces operations targeting missile storage depots, causing widespread damage to Iran's military capabilities while minimizing civilian casualties through precise intelligence from Mossad and US-provided satellite data. Videos soon surfaced of undercover IDF units operating in Iran during the initial attack. But most embarrassing of all, Israel had built multiple drone production facilities on Iranian soil. Israel was able to launch drones from inside Iran that ultimately limited Iran's ability to defend itself and also limited its ability to further attack Israel. Usually liars' pants catch on fire, but this time they had fallen and the whole world was laughing. The Iranian response was swift and desperate. Over the next 12 days, Iran launched nearly 550 ballistic missiles at Israel and over 1,000 suicide drones. Israel and her allies were successful in shooting down approximately 90% of Iran's missiles. Unfortunately, that means that 50 of these missiles were not intercepted. While some missiles did hit military bases and an oil refinery in Haifa, many of them smashed into densely populated residential areas in Tel Aviv, Bat Yam, Rishon LeZion, and Haifa. One missile directly struck a hospital in Beersheba. The casualty toll quickly mounted. At least 24 people were killed in the strikes and over 1,000 injured. Many remain homeless, with piles of rubble where their homes once stood.
Feel the breaking, pulling me under, caught up in a waiting game.
As Iran continued to target civilians in Israel, Israel threatened to destroy more and more Iranian infrastructure if they did not cease. Of course, Iran refused to stop, so Israel made good on their threats. On June 14th, Israel bombed Iran's Shahran oil depot, causing multiple explosions and fires. They bombed Tehran's central oil refinery and the Bushehr province oil fields. But Israel was not taking any chances. They bombed Iran's only aerial refueling plane, a Boeing KC-747. They bombed Iran's broadcasting station headquarters, and in a mostly symbolic act, they bombed the infamous Evin prison. But one issue remained unresolved. Iran's underground nuclear facilities remained out of reach of Israel's airstrikes. If Israel was going to destroy them, they would need boots on the ground, and given the ongoing wars with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Yemen, this would be challenging and risky. But then, something changed. President Trump made the decision that would ultimately change everything. On June 21st, 2025, exactly 8 days after Israel's initial strikes, America entered the conflict with Operation Midnight Hammer. 7 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers departed Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, armed with 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs, the most powerful conventional weapons in the American arsenal, weapons designed specifically for this very mission decades before. The mission was unprecedented in its scope and precision. The B-2s, flying from halfway around the world, struck the 3 most critical Iranian nuclear facilities: Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. The underground Fordow facility, which had been Iran's crown jewel of nuclear development, was obliterated by massive ordnance penetrators that carved through hundreds of feet of rock and concrete. Submarine-launched Tomahawk missiles provided additional precision strikes, ensuring no critical infrastructure remained intact. In total, more than 125 military aircraft participated in the operation, delivering over 75 precision-guided weapons. The strike was so devastating that satellite imagery showed massive craters where once stood Iran's nuclear ambitions. The Islamic Republic's decades-long pursuit of nuclear weapons had been set back by decades, if not permanently crippled. With Iran's nuclear program in ruins and its proxy network severely degraded, the path to negotiations suddenly opened. President Trump, working closely with Qatar's leadership, brokered emergency talks in Doha. Iran, faced with the complete destruction of its nuclear capabilities and the prospect of further devastating strikes, found itself in an impossible situation. The regime that had spent 46 years promising to wipe Israel and America off the map was now forced to negotiate from a position of unprecedented weakness. For too long, Iran has stood as the modern-day Haman, plotting the destruction of the Jewish people. But just as Queen Esther stood before the Persian king to save her people, we have witnessed Israel's miraculous deliverance in our time. The very nation that once hosted the Jewish exile, ancient Persia, has become the source of modern Israel's greatest threat. The Psalms tell us that he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep, and we have seen this truth manifested in our generation. The prophet Isaiah spoke of a time when nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Perhaps we are witnessing the first steps towards that glorious future. The people of Israel have returned to their land just as the prophets foretold. Jerusalem has been rebuilt, the Hebrew language has been revived, and the Jewish people have flourished despite facing the greatest persecution in human history. Now, as Iran's nuclear threat recedes and its proxy network crumbles, we see once again that no weapon formed against Israel shall prosper. The ancient enemy has awakened, but so too have the eternal promises. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob has not forgotten his covenant with his people. As we watch these events unfold, we are reminded that we are living in prophetic times, witnessing the fulfillment of prophecies made thousands of years ago.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We love here at the Israel Guys creating content like this. It's really what we're passionate about, getting the truth out to the world of what's actually happening here in Israel. If you want to see more of this happen, we're asking you now if you would consider partnering with us at theisraelguys.com/donate, or just click that link in the description below. We want to send more content out, and we need your help to do it. Thanks for joining us.